Coming up on Market Shares, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by half a point. What that means for your wallet.
And after lots of anticipation, former President Trump did not sell his stake in Trump Media, how the stock is responding.
Plus, construction on Micron's chip-making complex has been delayed again. Hold on to your wallet because Market Share starts right now.
Our economy is strong overall and has made significant progress toward our goals over the past 2 years. The labor market has cooled from its formerly overheated state. Inflation has eased substantially from a peak of 7% to an estimated 2.2% as of August. We're committed to maintaining our economy's strength by supporting maximum employment and returning inflation to our 2% goal.
That was Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on the recent interest rate cuts. Welcome to Market Shares. I'm Carson Fowler.
And I'm Sean Dempsey. The Fed surprised Wall Street with a half-point rate cut earlier this week. The biggest question this week was not if the Fed would cut rates, but by how much. This pivot comes in response to months of fading inflation. The annual rate has fallen sharply 2.5% last month from a peak of around 9% in June of 2022.
The cut is meant to maintain the pace of economic activity and help the labor market rebound after less than positive job growth in the U.S. Officials have been keeping an eye on the recent uptick in the unemployment rate, but by starting off with a big cut, they hope to prevent a bigger employment slowdown.
Outside of the emergency rate reductions during COVID, the last time the Fed cut by half a point was during the 2008 financial crisis. In addition to this, the committee put out a dot plot, which they are expected to cut rates by another full percentage point by the end of the year. So, Carson, what do you think of this?
Trading changed rapidly after the decision, with the Dow jumping as much as 300. I apologize. Obviously, like we talked about, Fed cut rates 50 basis points to about 4.75% to about 5%. The economic data actually looks pretty solid. From what I've got here, inflation's eased to about 2.5% in August, and that's a 64% decline from where we were in 2021 post-COVID. Job data looks good-ish. Hiring slowed to about 3.5%. CNBC said the last time that it was this low, the unemployment rate was actually 6%, but of course right now it's 4.5%, so not too bad there. Good call from Jerome Powell, not committing to anything yet. I like where we're at.
Yeah, what I think is super interesting about this is that it's actually going to benefit consumers who maybe have credit card debt, maybe want to take out loans for a car or even a house too. People are going to be able to move money from sort of their high yield savings accounts into other assets like stocks and bonds and mutual funds. But what is really interesting though is that there's more rate cuts to come.
You think?
Yes, I do.
He said that by the end, so Chief U.S. economist at PGIM, Tom Percelli, asked Powell if this was the start of a series of rate cuts, and Jerome Powell said he's not pre-committing to anything, not just yet, but I think that's a good decision. Let the markets adjust, let the Fed look over the incoming economic data, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, the biggest social media companies are under attack by the Federal Trade Commission. In a finding released yesterday, companies such as Amazon, Meta, and X collect users' data indefinitely and will not delete data upon requests. FTC Chair Lena Khan stated that the report lays out how social media and video companies harvest an enormous amount of Americans' personal data and monetize it to the tune of billions of dollars a year. Officials around the country are pushing for more restrictions on these platforms. Earlier this year, officials in New York tried to prohibit social media companies from showing content using algorithms to minors without parental consent.
One company in particular adding new safety features is Instagram. Starting this week, the app will automatically make youth accounts private, and teens won't be able to get around it by creating fake accounts with fake birth dates. Under these new accounts, users under the age of 18 will be made private by default and will not be able to send notifications between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. In addition, Instagram will reintroduce more supervision tools for adults, including a feature that allows parents to see the accounts that their teenagers are recently messaging.
Every time you hear about Boeing, it never seems to be good news. The company is temporarily furloughing thousands of white-collar employees in an effort to cut costs. Last week, over 30,000 workers, which is 96% of the staff, walked off the job. CEO Kelly Ortberg said that affected employees will not be paid for 1 out of every 4 weeks of work. The financial impact of the strike depends on how long it lasts, but it definitely adds pressure on Boeing's leaders who are trying to move the company past the safety crises from earlier this year.
Alaska Airlines closed its $1.9 billion merger with Hawaiian Airlines on Tuesday. The airline received final regulatory approval from the U.S. Department of Transportation to proceed after a few hurdles had stalled the transaction. Several conditions have been agreed upon between the two airlines to protect consumers, including the preservation of rewards programs, the maintenance of key flight routes, and provisions for military personnel and families. The DOT said in addition to these parameters, Hawaiian Airlines must guarantee family seating without an additional fee and provide compensation for flight delays and cancellation. Obviously, their stock trading about 1% higher than it was this week.
Well, French-Italian carmaker Stellantis is facing unprecedented strike threats from the United Auto Workers a year after a national walkout that led to billions in losses. The union is pushing for strikes across Stellantis plants due to ongoing disputes over unfulfilled worker benefits and investments.
Strike threats could significantly affect domestic and foreign production as negotiations between the automaker and the union intensify. This isn't the first time Stellantis has faced criticism for its handling of labor agreements, and the latest conflict could lead to widespread disruptions, especially in North America.
DirecTV and Disney have reached a deal to end blackout time for college football. Disney's networks have been dark for roughly 2 weeks, leaving fans not able to watch their favorite team on the gridiron. The dispute between both companies left 11 million Americans without the U.S. Open, college football, and Monday Night Football. The deal gives DirecTV the options to its customers. DirecTV also now owns the rights to Disney's ESPN direct-to-consumer streaming service. The service is expected to launch in early 2025 with no additional cost to its subscribers, luckily.
The WNBA has decided it's time to expand. The league will be adding an expansion team in Portland, Oregon, to bring the league to 15 teams. The team will begin playing in 2026. Portland has had a WNBA team before, but it shut down after a few years back in 2002. The addition of a team in Portland is a byproduct of the growing popularity of the sport nationwide. The 2024 WNBA season saw record-shattering numbers, both in-person attendance and for viewership on television. This is a big thanks to Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, big personality stars in the WNBA.
And Nike is making a major shakeup as they struggle from declining sales and increased competition. The company announced that CEO John Donahoe will retire next month and will be replaced by Elliott Hill, a former Nike executive. Following the announcement, Nike stock rose 9%, but they are still down 24% overall for the year. The company has slashed the number of traditional stores that sell its product in an attempt to shift customers to its own channels. They claim that they can make more than double by selling through its own website and stores. This did not have the change anticipated, though. Sales were flat last quarter and are predicted to drop another 10% next quarter unless Hill can change things around. The start of construction for the Micron chip complex in Clay has been delayed yet again. Plans to break ground have been postponed to November of 2025. Construction was originally set to begin this past June. We're bringing in market shares analyst Ben Bascuk, who's live on the future site of Micron to tell us more. Ben?
Hi guys, thank you. Yeah, right now I'm right off of Burnett Road here in Clay, New York, in front of about 244 acres of natural wetlands. Now these are the same wetlands that Micron is planning on filling in when they begin construction, like you guys said, now delayed to late November of 2025. Now all this is coming after the Environmental Protection Agency sent a notice to Micron saying they basically weren't meeting the federal regulations and demands necessary to continue their groundbreaking. We saw another letter in late July of last year from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the same vein, and this is all coming after a period of public commentary concerning the local aquatic life behind me right now, but moreover, right above our heads, where an endangered species of bats is living. Now those bats are preventing Micron from cutting down any of these trees, continuing construction from March to November of 2025. Again, that date is now fall of next year. Now, right now, what we're seeing is the U.S. Commerce Department and the EPA are butting heads over funding. We saw the Biden administration after the CHIPS Act and after this big announcement for Central New York, especially billions of dollars promised to the construction of these fabs, and now we've just seen delay after delay after delay. Now, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the U.S. Army Corps, who has final say over the wetlands here right off of Burnett Road. But we'll have to see if those wetlands cause more problems and more delays down the line. Right now, we're projecting Micron to continue that groundbreaking. What we've heard is fall of 2025. That's all for me. Back to you guys in studio.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate your report Permanent downtown Syracuse. Coming up on Market Shares, a landmark deal about paying college athletes was sent back to the drawing board. What needs to happen for the case to pass? After this.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
It's been almost 6 months since Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social, went public. But, sorry, we're getting now to our market update here on Market Shares. We'll get things started with the Dow. The Dow up about a 1.5% from last week. Obviously, a big jump after that Fed rate cut. And consumers and investors are more likely to be investing. Fed rate cuts on Wednesday. Nike, Apple, and McDonald's leading gains there. Sean, kick us off the NASDAQ.
Yeah, well, with the NASDAQ, it's up about 2.5% on the week. A little bit less, about a percent and 3/4. But this is because of the rate cuts that happened earlier this week. We talked about that a little earlier on in the show. Tech companies are now going to be able to borrow more, grow more, and spend more. On top of that, there's thoughts that tech companies are going to be able to hire more, which they haven't been able to over the last couple of years because of higher interest rates. But now looking at the S&P 500, up a little over 1% on the week. This is mainly due, once again, to the rate cuts. It's simulating a decrease in inflation. It's going to help people a lot when taking out loans for credit cards, when it comes to looking at cards and credit card debt, things like that, and mortgages as well. It's going to increase the likelihood of people moving their money out of high-yield savings accounts into broader indexes and other assets to grow their wealth. Overall, a great thing for the economy. That's it for our market update, though. We have to move into our market movers, our top movers for the week. First one we're going to talk about is General Motors. The stock is up about 9% on the week, and it's mainly because they're opening up access to about 1,800 Tesla superchargers for its customers. Now, this is super interesting because customers in the U.S. will now be able to buy an adapter for a little over $200 for GM EV owners to have access to more than 230,000 public Tesla chargers. That's for General Motors owners. Tesla announced that it would make some of its charging stations available to all U.S. electric vehicles by the end of 2024. The plan was to make at least 7,500 chargers from Tesla's superchargers. But the company is not the only automaker to start using Tesla's network. In February, Ford actually announced that it was going to allow its EV owners to use Tesla chargers.
Yeah, our next market mover on the week, Airbnb, the real estate and technology company, one of the bigger gains this week. They were up about 14% from the week prior. The company missed earnings in early August, but have since rebounded, finally getting back to where it was a month and a half ago. Up about 10% this week, trading at $130.08, up 12 points. Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky telling Reuters yesterday the company is focused on expanding its long-term rental experiences. So trying to move away from some of those weekend places and into longer rentals. Interesting stuff.
And moving into our last market mover, it's Apple. Everyone knows Apple, and it's actually interesting because the new iPhone actually came out. The stock is up about 8% on it was up about 3% on Thursday. It's up about 7.5% on the week. A little under at 6%. This is because of lower interest rates. They're usually a good thing for tech companies because they can increase the value of their future earnings for high growth tech stocks. It is also up because of the iPhone, which I mentioned earlier, which has reached stores today, the iPhone 16. It's said to have better overall performance with enhanced GPU. Also, a new camera. It feels like there's a new camera every single year. Apple says that the phone quite literally has 2 cameras in one phone, Carson. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, good demand and growth rates from Apple so far this year. Coming up on Market Shares, a landmark deal about paying college athletes was sent back to the drawing board. What happens? What needs to happen for the case to pass?
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good stir. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay. Yeah. Hey Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to Market Shares. It's been almost 6 months since Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social, went public. But with shares crumbling, former President Donald Trump had a new decision yesterday, whether to share his massive stake in the company or. Our Alex Burstein joins us in the studio. Alex, did Trump make this big sale?
For now, he didn't, and according to the former president speaking last Friday, he isn't planning on selling anytime soon.
I don't want to have my voice shut down, but a lot of people think that I'll sell my shares. You know, they're worth billions of dollars, but I don't want to sell my shares. I'm not going to sell my shares. I don't need money. And it is for me, it's a great voice. It's a great voice. And it's a voice, it works so well.
Now, financially, that may not be the best decision. It's been a rocky few months since Trump Media went public with shares. The stock has had both its highs and its lows. It's soared at times, like when it went public and after the first assassination attempt at Trump, but it's also seen some big lows when Kamala Harris became the Democratic candidate for president, for example, and even yesterday, while it may have seemed like it was just a normal Thursday, it represented the first day that Trump could sell his stake in the company, worth now around $2 billion. A lockout provision after going public expired at 4 p.m. yesterday, and worries about sales, both from Trump and other key investors, have led to major drops in the shares. Yesterday, the stock dropped 6%, and it's down over 75% from March. That brought shares down to under $15 a share, where at one point it was over $60. Earlier this year, his stake was worth as much as $6 billion, and while the now estimated $1.8 billion is no small number, it's certainly a drop-off from where it once was. And the drop might not even be done yet. While it's uncertain what Trump's future is with the stocks, there's a number of other key investors, and if any of them decide to jump ship, the future of this stock could go down.
Alex, do you think this slide is likely to continue with the stock?
Yeah, I mean, even looking at what happened today, more than 24 hours after that lockout provision ended, the stock continued to plummet more than $1 further down, and it just seems like that's the trend. There's investors from Truth Social, there's even some former people who are on Trump's TV show, The Apprentice. If any of them decide to put their stocks up for sale, this could cause major tanking. They have over 20 million shares combined, and obviously the big one, Trump has over almost 60% of stake in the company. If that sold, that would cause a major dump.
When would we know if Trump were to sell his shares in his social company?
Yeah, there's a couple of signs that they're going to have to look for. The first one is the markets would definitely be up in the air because of this. There would likely be a major swing in the stock, but you also have to look at the number of shares traded per day on this Trump media share. They are usually about 9 million shares that are traded per day. If that changes up, that could be something. And then finally, from a regulatory standpoint, this will have to be reported to the SEC because of what a major sale it would be. He has 2 to 5 days to report that. So if he were to sell, we'd know within a couple of days at the longest.
Alex, are there any indications that Trump might actually end up selling his shares?
Yeah, at the current point, there really isn't. It seemed at one point like he would, but he mentioned earlier last week that he's currently planning on keeping things the way they are, and it's for a couple of reasons. You look at the political side of it, there's a lot of Trump fans who are invested into this Trump media stock, and if he were to sell, it could tank it even more. That would not be good politically for him. He also just sees this stock not as much about money, but more so about power, so he wants to keep it for now, and we'll see what continues in the next couple of days.
Thanks again for that report, Alex. Attorneys negotiating a $2.78 billion settlement of class action antitrust cases against the NCAA are working to clarify parts of the agreement that a judge wants to be addressed before deciding whether to let the landmark deal move forward. Our Riley Underwood is here to break down the complicated case. Riley.
Well, this case is House versus the NCAA. House is the last name of former Arizona State swimmer Grant House, who's the lead plaintiff in the case. The NCAA, of course, the governing body for collegiate athletics. They're the defendant along with the 5 Power 5 conferences, the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and the SEC. At a recent hearing, U.S. District Judge Claudia Wilkin declined to grant preliminary approval to the settlement and expressed dismay with a plan to regulate and potentially restrict third-party name, image, and likeness payments to athletes from booster-funded organizations called collectives. Now, these collectives are pools of money that boosters put together to recruit, retain, and pay college athletes. The NCAA wants to restrict the collectives, and House does not. NIL collectives have been popping up in almost every Division I school, including every Power 4 school. The deal will also pay out nearly $3 billion in damages to current and former college athletes who were denied opportunities to cash in on their fame when paying the players was outlawed. It also sets up a groundbreaking revenue sharing system that will permit schools to direct more than $20 million per year to their athletes. This would mean paying the players directly, and the way to spread the money would be up to each school.
Riley, what clarification does the judge actually need?
Well, the judge said she needs clarification because the NCAA is kind of being wishy-washy on what they want NIL to be. She said that if it's approved, then the NCAA will be explicitly paying for play and allowing schools to pay their players directly. So that no pay-for-play thing is kind of not going to be there anymore. The NCAA has dug themselves into a hole here, and the judge and the plaintiffs, they both know that.
Riley, you mentioned a few of the Power 5 schools, but what about the non-power schools with maybe a little less money on their balance sheet?
Oh, well, Carson, those are the ones that are kind of upset with this because the smaller D1s, they don't have a say in this settlement. They're still getting hit with the implications. The governors of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota have all spoken out and expressed their concerns over the way that these new rules will impact their schools. The settlement would put all D1 programs on the hook for payment and all the other new policies as well. Nearly $1 billion of the $2.8 are owed from those outside the power conferences. It would also mean that those schools would be losing out on over $200,000 per year over the next 10 years. That's what this settlement is all focused on.
Riley, the pay-for-play seems to be moving really fast. What's the root cause of it?
Well, it all started with the introduction of the transfer portal in late 2018. Before that, players had to sit out a year when they transferred schools. After that, NIL was introduced, and it was meant for brand deals, but it's really spiraled out of control because there was no guidance when it was first introduced. My question to the NCAA is, how are you not winning these cases? You make over $1 billion each year, and every single court case you go into, you lose. When you look at the reason that NIL was introduced, this is not what it was for. You kind of got to look at the monster that they've created with this, but it's really likely what the future of college sports will be.
Thanks so much, Riley. Carson, it's super interesting with NIL when you think about guys from the past who, missed out on the opportunity to cash in, like Baker Mayfield. You look at Reggie Bush, and now you look at some of these guys who are making millions and millions of dollars. It's super interesting.
I mean, well, think about a guy like Cam Ward. Could have easily gotten drafted in one of the maybe in this third round, and he came back to Miami. He was obviously transferred from Washington State. He's having a big year so far, probably making a little over $1 million.
Even Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord too, probably got a bag as well. Really is interesting with like EA College Football 25. Also that Tennessee talent fee, 10% on all their season ticket holders. We're really an interesting place in college sports.
It's going to be fun to cover for the next few months.
Yeah.
But coming up on Market Shares, good news for pasta lovers. A popular Italian restaurant will be partnering with Uber Eats. Stay tuned.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back into Market Shares. Olive Garden has decided to change course and will now deliver their famous breadsticks and pasta. Darden Restaurants, the chain's parent company, announced an exclusive multi-year delivery partnership with Uber that will begin later this year.
Olive Garden already offers delivery through its website and mobile app for orders with a $100 minimum delivered by the restaurant's employees. Moving forward, the chain will use Uber Eats drivers. However, customers will only be able to order on the company's website and app.
So, Carson, are you a fan of this or are you not a fan of this?
Sean, is it horrible that I've never been to Olive Garden?
What? Are you serious?
Never been to Olive Garden? I've never been to Olive Garden, and I don't think I'm ever going to go or order on Uber Eats.
But you've been to Texas Roadhouse, right? With their bread? No? You haven't been to Texas Roadhouse?
I've never been to Texas Roadhouse either.
What's another restaurant that you've never been to?
Red Lobster?
I've never been to Red Lobster either, actually.
You've been to Moe's? Is Moe's in that category?
I've never been to Moe's.
You know Moe's free chips.
What? Really?
Moe's free chips. Some might say that it's better than Chipotle. Some. I am not some.
I'm a huge fan of this, though. I use Uber Eats a lot. I try to cook when I can, but it's a good thing.
Do you have like the Uber Eats like reward card or like program? Yeah, no. That's wasting money in my opinion. And that's all the time we have for you on the episode of I'm sorry. That is not all the time we have. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News and like us on Facebook. I'm Carson Fowler.
And I'm Sean Dempsey. Have a great night, Syracuse.